background of GST और overview of GST. Broadly तो मेरे टॉपिक्स हैं आज के. वो overview और overview को हम broadly we can divide it into two parts. One is what is the historical background of GST. Then we discuss about the history. एक प्रश्न हमेशा दिमाग में आता है what would and how would history be useful. पर मेरे को लगता है कि कोई भी चीज के एवोल्यूशन समझनी है, कोई भी चीज का अगर बेस समझना है, अगर आपको सतह पे रहना है, यानी if you want to be just on the surface, if you want to just understand what it is without really understanding what it is, then history is not it. But if you want to get into the root of the matter, if you want to know what GST is, the most important factor and feature is the historical method. So the first thing that we shall be discussing would be the history. And that history would be what led to the introduction of GST. What is the current tax structure? What are the problems being faced? And ultimately how we reached at this level where we are saying now GST is on that. That is the first part. The second part would be that broadly what GST is. We discussed that how GST is going to affect, but what GST is. This is how we shall proceed. First of all, I shall discuss what is the background of it. उसके लिए मैं सबसे पहले डिस्कस करता हूँ what is the current indirect tax structure in India. You all know that the Union Parliament charges the customs duty, excise duty, service tax. There are several cesses, surcharges, Swachh Bharat cess, Krishi Kalyan cess. Then there is a central sales tax. Broadly, these are the central taxes. Then on the state taxes side, there are many. The numbers is huge, but the most important out of those is the sales tax, which we fondly call as VAT. Actually, VAT is a misnomer. Every tax is a VAT. Wherever there is a credit facility which is available, or the tax is on somehow on a value addition basis, it is a VAT. Your central excise duty is a set VAT. If you look at section 3 of the central excise duty, what is it? What is it called itself? It's a central value added tax, and it is supported by credit. Likewise, that is actually not a VAT, it's a sales tax. And along with that, there are certain statutes which provide for purchase tax. What is the purchase tax? It is the other side of the coin. Sellers will pay the purchaser. Transaction is of sale, it's like reverse tax. Then the other very important tax is entry tax. And in some places it is also called chungi. Then it is the entertainment tax, luxury tax, excise duty on liquor, tax on vehicles, tax on goods and passengers, electricity duty. ये सारे state अभी taxes लगाता है. ऐसा नहीं है कि ये सारे subsume हो गए थे. मैं आपको बताऊंगा what all taxes have actually been subsumed in the GST. There are still certain taxes out of these which are not in the GST. That we discuss. But let us first discuss what are the problems of the current GST, current tax system. We form the basis for introduction of a GST mechanism. और ये सब ऐसा नहीं है कि एक दिन में आ गया GST. आज लगभग 16 साल हो गए जब ये सोचा गया था कि India would also be following and introducing the goods and services tax. After 16 years, we have been able to come to a position where we say that yes, from next year onwards we are trying to bring in GST. So what are the current problems of the current taxes? First, to any businessman, if you say that these are the many number of taxes which we are given to your business, you would run away. You would say, how do I manage? There are so many numbers of taxes. So many number of taxes means so many number of compliances. So many number of compliances means so so many interactions with those administrative authorities. And in India, tax authorities have never been easy, though they are never easy anywhere else also. But here they are even a little more difficult. So the first difficulty is a businessman faces. In fact, I often say, people ask, we are going to start a company, we are going to do this business. Please tell us what are the different taxes applicable to us. We would make a 70-slide presentation and say, when you are in Karnataka, there is an entry tax law. But if your goods are scheduled goods, then there is a special entry tax law also. If from Karnataka you take them to Tamil Nadu, then Tamil Nadu entry tax will apply. If you sell, then sales tax will apply. If it is within the state, then VAT will apply. Interstate CST will apply. If you are manufacturing, central excise duty. But if your process doesn't amount to manufacture, service tax. If you are getting it on job work basis, then you can remove without payment of duty. उतना करते करते वो अपना सर पकड़ के बैठ जाता है। उतना नहीं है लेकिन काफी। 70 स्लाइड के बाद हम 71st स्लाइड पे लिखते हैं थैंक यू और नीचे नाम लगा के लिख देते हैं। Though we have mentioned what all taxes can be there, but we cannot guarantee that this is the exhaustive list of taxes which is applicable. There are so many number of laws. Every state has its own local laws. Every local law is administered in a particular way, and many taxes have just become a tradition. If you say, please show me the notification, no one has the notification also. So there are these matching. So the first difficulty is multiplicity of taxes. Second, all right, after all, Mr. Agarwal, what you are saying is that every state has its own entry tax, no problem. Tell us what is entry tax. Then I will tell him. If you are in Punjab, only when goods are entering into the state from outside the state, entry tax will apply. Whereas, if you are in Odisha, if you move within the state from one local area to other, that also will lead to imposition of entry tax. That in Punjab only 25 items are leviable to entry tax. In Odisha, every item is leviable. In Punjab, the rate is from 1 to 20%. In Odisha, it is 0.5% to 27%. But that is not the end of the matter. If you are using goods for manufacture, in Odisha, the state rate becomes half. Whereas in Maharashtra, every municipality has a separate octroi law. Where Maharashtra, Bombay has a separate octroi, Nashik has a separate octroi. Maharashtra, the biggest issue is octroi. So, it is not just the laws, it is also the variety of laws in each state. Every entry tax would be having its own peculiarity. Every VAT would be having its own peculiarity. You look at Delhi VAT. Delhi VAT says credit shall be available in respect of all goods which are purchased for use in the business of making sales. So it's a very wide definition. All goods used in the business of making sales. So if you are buying the item which is not sold but is used for making sales, that is also available. But in UP, they would say you will get credit only if either the goods are sold as it is, or it is capital goods defined under the Act, or if the goods are purchased for using manufacture of goods for sale. Then there are huge disputes. What is the meaning of goods which are purchased for using manufacture of goods for sale? There have been several incidents where a person purchased raw materials. Those raw materials were converted into capital goods, and those capital goods were used for manufacture of goods. So the department said, look, what did you purchase? I say, I purchased iron. Did you use iron for manufacturing the goods? You use the machine for manufacturing. Then the court says, no. It is not this direct connection. Once the iron has been purchased and converted into capital goods, that capital goods are used, therefore iron is also used. So then there are UPP. So every law has its own peculiarity. So it is the number of laws and its variety which creates the difficulty. The third, which is even more maddening, I would say, in India we follow currently an event-based tax. It's a very interesting situation. I will give you some examples. Excise duty is a duty on Manufacture, not removal. It's a duty of manufacture. So what is the debate? No. The debate is an act of 1944. We are in 2016. How many years? 70 years. After 70 years, we do not know which process comes to. The biggest debate is whether this process amounts to manufacture. Because if it does, you have to pay. If it does not, you need not pay. And there also it is not that the department every time argues that you are manufacturing. If it suits them, they also argue that it is not manufacturing. I'll give you an example. A person was engaged in converting wires into wires of thinner gauge. So thicker wire to be converted into wires of thinner gauge. He wants that his process amounts to manufacturing because he is supplying to automobile industry. Automobile industry will take credit. If he is not under excise, what would happen? The credit of duty would not be available to him. There the department argues, no, it is not manufacturing. And Supreme Court says, yes, it is not manufacturing. So what happens? There are two problems. One, unnecessary litigation. Second, litigation rates. Ultimately, the buyer would be subjected to excise duty in form of automobile, but the original excise duty paid on raw material would not be available as credit. Similarly, recently what happened? A question arose. A syringe is manufactured. That syringe is given to this person. He merely does the sterilization and sells it. So he buys unsterilized, processes, sterilizes and sells it. Now the question is, does sterilization amount to manufacturing? Now look, after 70 years we are debating this issue. The court asked, alright, what is the test of manufacture? The court says, test is, if a process would amount to manufacture if it results into a new commodity with a new character, name or use. This is the test laid down. They said, now tell me whether this unsterilized needle would have been used for using as a needle. Answer was a pure no, it cannot be. So why has the use not changed by sterilization? Then in a whisper the court was told that would mean that every hospital would become a factory and every doctor would become a manufacturer. You know, when they are in an operation theatre, what do they do? They become a knife and sterilize it. That means they are manufactured. A sterilized knife and then he has to pay the duty. And the court so felt that yes, there is something different. There is something wrong with the. And they explained it. They said that every change in use does not become a manufacturer. The first condition is that there must first of all be a change in the commodity. There must at least be some change in the commodity which results in the change of use. So if the new use is the result of a change in commodity, then and then alone it is considered to be manufacturing. But these are only intellectual debates. Only people who want to intellectually stimulate themselves, it would help them. But what is the object? Let us now come back. What is the objective of indirect tax law? What is the objective? To collect the tax. Do you want to get into intellectual debates or do you want to collect the tax? After all, any tax, what is the objective of any tax? To get revenue. There is no other objective. The only single objective which is there in respect of any taxing statute is the revenue. And not to make it an intellectual playground where people can just come and give their views and then there are huge debates and ultimately after 70 years you don't know what is the matter. Now, let me give you another example. Sales tax. Sales tax is a tax on sale. And service tax is a tax on use. Restaurant, is it a sale or a service? We are grappling with this after 70 years. There are 6 high courts saying different things. You know, Kerala says it is not a service, it is only a sale of goods. Chhattisgarh says it is sale and service both. Let both the authorities sit together decide how much percentage is sale, how much percentage is service. Uttarakhand also says both are service and sale, but says let's say 40% was imposed by center, state can impose only 60%. Sales tax. Delhi doesn't talk about sales tax, says service tax would be applicable. Likewise, Bombay also says service tax would be applicable. After 70 years, you have not been able to determine whether this is a sale or this is a. Likewise, even in software, there are lots of issues. Therefore, this event-based tax, after all, the objective of the law is to collect tax revenue. And it is indirect tax revenue. So what does it mean? Every transaction of goods, every transaction of service, collect the tax. Why am I bothered whether it is the same? Why am I bothered is it a service? Why am I bothered? Is it a manufacturer? After all, if it is one manufacturer, on a job work basis, it is a service. So remove these distinctions. Tax every transaction. That gave them the genesis for introducing these. That gave them a basis for bringing about the new regime, which was a problematic. Because how did it evolve? Now let us talk about this. ये हुआ कैसे? How did it happen? In olden time, the transaction was what? It was basically goods. And what kind of goods? Natural goods. Either it was the livestock, cows, buffaloes, goats, camels, which are being traded, horses. अरब से horse आ रहे हैं, हिंदुस्तान से गाय आ रही है, कहीं से भैंस आ रही है, या फिर natural products, grapes, cotton, oil seeds. So when there was a trade from one state to another, if it was from one country to another, there comes the concept of customs. या बाहर से कुछ लेके आते हो, it is customary to charge a duty. आपको पता है वो नगर में प्रवेश करेगा, वहाँ पर कोई खड़ा है, पूछेगा भैया कहाँ से आए हो, बाहर से आए हो, सामान दिखा दो, असेसमेंट करते हैं. चाणक्य की किताब में भी क्या सीखा है? कस्टम. इसीलिए it is called custom. दूसरा एक स्टेट से दूसरे में बचूंगी. फिर जैसे जैसे इंडस्ट्रियल रेवोल्यूशन आई, तो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में ड्यूटी लगी, तो उन्होंने ढूंढा कि अब कहाँ टैक्स लगा सकते. फिर जब सर्विस सेक्टर ग्रो हुआ तो 1994 में it was decided that let us impose service tax. So it all happened gradually. That was a gradual introduction of event-based taxation. We started identifying the sources of revenue. Let us tax it, let us tax that, let us tax that, let us go to the factory and tax them. Ultimately, today we have come to a very sophisticated situation where people are sitting in their drawing rooms and bedrooms, just using their fingers on the internet and earning crores of rupees. It doesn't fit in any of these concepts. But don't know what that means. Is it goods? Is it service? No one knows. So they say, let us now move further to the next step. That becomes the building block for introduction of it. One more very pertinent problem was there. If centralized duty was charged only on manufacturing, and as soon as it is held that a process does not amount to manufacture, there is a total loss of revenue. क्योंकि manufacture हुआ ही नहीं. So there is no duty. Now assume that a process actually amounts to manufacturing. Then also, duty is only on the state of manufacturing. Now that manufactured good would also reach the market through a value addition chain. There would be a wholesaler, there would be a distributor, there would be a retailer, and ultimately a buyer. But duty was only on manufacturing. So what happens to that value chain? It goes out of the tax net. So this indirect tax system, which is event-based, is very distortionary. On the one hand, it doesn't tax the whole value chain. On the contrary, there are situations where multiple taxes are imposed again and again. I will give you an example. Let us say a person wishes to manufacture a certain commodity. Now what happens? He says, let us take an example of a machine manufacturer. Let us say a machine is manufactured to be manufactured in Pune. In order to manufacture the machine, some iron ore is required. I would say iron parts are required. Now from where iron parts will come? The base would be iron ore. Let us say iron ore is manufactured in Jharkhand. It is extracted in Jharkhand. From Jharkhand, it would be sent to a plant which would be manufacturing billets. So when iron ore is extracted and sold to that plant, there would be a CST, there would be an entry tax. Now when it comes to the billet manufacturing plant, when that plant does the activity and it would be selling to someone else who then makes some sheets, etc., there again would be a CST and again would be an entry tax. And of course excise duty at every stage. Then the person who makes those sheets would convert the billets into sheets. Then it would send to a fourth factory where it gets converted into parts, again a CST, again an entry tax. Ultimately that goes to the machine manufacturer, who would convert that into a machine and assume that that machine is again used in mining. You would again sell it on basis of CST, entry tax and excise duty. So how many times CST has been imposed and how many times entry tax has been imposed? So same transaction of machine going to the manufacturer of iron ore, a circular thing, but how many times the tax cost has been added to it? Ultimately that gets passed on to the final product. And what happens? There is a distortion because of multiplicity of taxation, because of tax on a tax. So therefore, we have to find the best possible tax. And in case of an indirect tax, the objective is every activity to be taxed and taxed in a way that the total tax is transferred to the buyer and nothing remains in the value chain. This is the objective. So that both the situations are avoided. Situation number one, where actually no tax was charged because the activity of the doing not management. That situation should also not arise. Likewise, the situation should not arise where while a commodity is manufactured, 10 times the tax has been imposed. Ultimately, when the machine manufacturer would sell, his invoice would show what? His invoice would show CST. His invoice would show entry tax. Let us say CST 2%, entry tax 2%. No one would know that the 100 rupees which he is charging already contains 25 rupees of tax charged at different stages from different people. That is the cost. It becomes a cost to the whole economic system. In order to avoid that, we need to have a system which is a transaction-based tax. These were the problems which led to the introduction of the concept of GST in India. And as I was mentioning, it has been actually a very, very long time that they are trying to introduce GST in India. In 2000, the Vajpayee government started discussion on GST by setting up an empowered committee which was headed by Sri Asim Das Gupta. In 2003, the Kendriya Task Force on Indirect Tax suggested a comprehensive goods and service tax based on VAT principles. And then the first budget speech was made in 2006-07, whereby the concept was mooted. And thereafter, there were meetings of the empowered committee. They introduced the first discussion paper. Then they ultimately gave the 115th Constitutional Amendment Bill, which was not liked by people. It was changed into 122nd. Again changed by the Rajya Sabha, came back and ultimately became the 101st Constitutional Amendment Bill. So a long journey has been actually travelled to reach from that historical position of GST. Whereby the tax on goods and services was in the form of event-based tax. And now we are moving to a new supply-based tax, which we shall be discussing. So with this, this is the brief history and evolution of the concept. Now we shall discuss in the second part what